Welcome to Movies That Matter, a podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari.
And I'm Stacy Moore.
And what movie are we overanalyzing this week?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Beautiful day in the neighborhood.
All right. Directed by Marielle Heller and starring Tom Hanks as the titular Mr. Rogers.
Yep.
And along with Matthew Rhys, who depicts journalist Lloyd Vogel, a writer for Esquire who is assigned to profile the beloved television icon Fred Rogers. So, what did you think?
Okay, I should state up front, I'm a Rogers devotee.
Okay.
I grew up on the show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Right, so grew up on it. As a Catholic, I fully legitimately consider Fred Rogers a saint, even though he has not been canonized.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am
Although he has been ordained.
He was an ordained minister.
Yeah, not
yes.
Catholic, obviously.
Correct.
He was married.
Correct. Yeah. So, but I know people who, like, when they're praying, ask for Fred Rogers' intercession.
Yeah, I believe it.
Right. All that said, I didn't care for it.
Really?
I know. I know that it got like a 96% like Rotten Tomatoes score, critical and audience acclaim. And when it started, I was really optimistic. Like, I love there's a few like really magical moments at the beginning where I thought it was going to be really interesting. Like, it's where, the model miniature neighborhood like expands out to include Pittsburgh and like flies over Manhattan, and Nick Drake gets queued up. And I just thought, and I felt like it was.
Yeah.
I'm the only one.
Yeah. I have a feeling that's going to play into our sort of second half deep dive of the episode. So in preparation for this, and I know you had seen it, I think when it came out, I did watch Won't You Be My Neighbor, the documentary about Fred Rogers, which I highly recommend. So first and foremost, there is like a weight to Tom Hanks, like a kind of heft. Like a gravitas, like he's a little bit gravelly voiced.
Okay.
That just isn't Fred Rogers at all.
I see what you're saying.
I mean, they're sort of saying the joke about Fred Rogers is 143 pounds his whole life, and he's very slight, but he also just, for somebody who was on TV, I don't want to say he has no stage presence. That seems almost unfair. But it's a very quiet presence. And his voice is very gentle. Thin, very gentle. It's like he's just the most unobtrusive presence there can be. And I just think Tom Hanks was there too much to successfully carry off the right vibe of Mr. Rogers. Although I thought he did a really good job. And I don't know that there's anybody that I particularly would have been like, it should have been this person. I think it's very hard to play somebody like that and not devolve into sort of caricature.
Sure.
For me, like, off the bat, I was like, that was only when he calls the journalist on the phone and you just hear him recorded was.
Oh, interesting.
When I didn't have to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that, but I see what you're saying. I think most of what Hanks brought to it was just sort of his general lovability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've heard him recently referred to as America's dad. I guess the throne, the title having been recently transferred from, he shall not be named. But I think he brought that just likability that was necessary.
Yeah.
For someone like Fred Rogers. I guess it wasn't an impersonation. I give him that. Like, he wasn't impersonating Fred Rogers.
No, that's a better way of what I was trying to say before. Yeah, it wasn't impersonation. He did a good job. I mean, it's hard to completely inhabit somebody else, especially one that so strongly. Mm-hmm. And I had just seen the documentary. Having just seen the documentary, did you catch the other restaurant dwellers when they took their moment of silence?
I only saw Joanne. looking directly at the camera.
Joanne was there. Mr. Feeney was Feely?
Mr. McFeely.
Mr. McFeely was there. Like
him.
most of the cast and crew were in. So
really?
Easter egg. Most of the cast and crew, his real life wife, in the restaurant during that scene, which was really cute. I was like, oh, that's his wife. Like, oh, it's Mr. McFeely. Yeah. So
I wondered why they were lingering so long on the crowd around them, and then I only caught Joanne.
So you.
Well, what do you feel about the movie as a whole? Did you like? I appreciated sort of the risks that she took. Like I could see what she was trying things. You know, she tried to make it. It's structured very much like an episode.
Yeah, and I want to kind of get into. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So like overall, I was, I guess, fine with it. But the thing is, like, I'm not a Mr. Rogers fan.
Okay.
I just found him kind of boring. Like, I'm not good with like silence and no activity. Like, even now, like, I'm stink at that kind of stuff. Like, my little monkey brain is like, entertain me. I like the electric company when they shout it all the time.
Yeah. And the film was very quiet. It was very slow. It used a lot of the bebop jazz score that the show used.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that kind of sums up both our personalities in a nutshell. Like, you like Mr. Rogers and me not. Like,
sure.
But, so I didn't go into it, like, with particularly high hopes. I do like the director. I did really like Can You Ever Forgive Me? I wasn't sure how I felt about the conceit of setting it up like an episode. I mean, I loved all the little miniatures of New York and Pittsburgh, that's for sure. They were so cute. I just loved them.
Yeah.
But I'm like, how do I feel about that overall as like a directorial choice?
I don't feel like it worked.
Yeah.
I feel like the pacing was glacial. And I've seen, and like, as we just pointed out, I have no problem with, long stationary cuts. Like, I've been recently watching something that has like much longer or just as long cuts of just a person's face, like contemplating something. Mm-hmm. And it's gripping. Like, it can be done well if used effectively. I'm using my hands a lot. Sorry, listeners. It can be used effectively, and I don't think it was here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I like I said, I feel like I'm biased because it was just not that big of a show.
Well, I think the show's meant for very small children.
Yeah.
Right. It's supposed to feel like real life. It's not supposed to feel like entertainment. So I think but this is entertainment. This is a movie for adults. And there were people in the audience of the screening I saw. Mm-hmm. There were people laughing during earnest conversations.
Oh, yes.
That I don't think were supposed to be ironic. I think it was just because they were A, not connecting with whatever they were supposed to be feeling, and B, just not picking up on like the message of what was happening, and that's a failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I would say for like my money, this movie after the documentary was wholly unnecessary. Just go back and watch Won't You Be My Neighbor. Like, there was just...
Could not agree more.
There was just, no reason to make this.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Why do you feel that way?
So first of all, let's pick apart, this movie is not about Mr. Rogers.
Thank you!
I mean, not even a little bit. It's definitely about the journalist who's...
He's a supporting character.
Yeah, whose real name was Tom Juno. They changed his name because, obviously, they add all this backstory stuff. That didn't really happen. Did you go back and read the original Esquire?
Yes.
Yeah, none of that stuff was in there. So it's all about this guy, and he's got a troubled relation. His mom died. He has a troubled relationship with his dad. He's just has a new baby, and he's really not kind of present for the baby or for his wife. And in fact, until he has this big reconciliation with his dad, you literally never see him hold the baby the entire movie. Sure. Until the end. So sort of showcasing how disconnected from his family, and through meeting Mr. Rogers, he works out a bunch of stuff and, is able to become more present in his life. And I sort of have two bones to pick with that. One we can go into in more detail, but at the surface, you know, Mr. Rogers was all about, like, teaching you how to deal with uncomfortable things, right? Like, that was what he wanted to show kids, which is, like, a really sort of garden-level variety, helpful lesson for all of us to learn.
Absolutely.
Is it actual therapy with a trained professional? No, it's not. And, like, the journalist had bigger problems than were going to be fixed by, like, Mr. Rogers' child philosophy. Like, I don't want to poo-poo the philosophy. Like, if you love Mr. Rogers, I'm here. Like, his message is, like, feel your feelings and be kind to people. Like, no matter how boring I found the show, like, there's no way I'm going to criticize anything about, like, that central philosophy, right? Yeah. But, like, it doesn't work for adults. Like, it's for kids.
Right. It is specifically for kids.
And so it's like the whole movie, you're, like, supposed to feel like he's totally transformed by meeting Mr. Rogers, and you're like, you're trying to oversell Mr. Rogers to me. Like, I'm sure he was a wonderful guy in real life, but, like, life-changing for an adult?
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't know, life-changing. In the article, you know, Tom Juno seemed to feel like his life was changed. But it was a completely different change than what's depicted in the film.
Right.
Which begs the question, if the movie's not about Mr. Rogers, it's ostensibly based on this article, and yet it's not at all based on what actually happens in the article, why does the movie exist, is my question.
I mean, it's basically, and it's sort of telegraphed this way through all the stylistic choices of fantasy about what would happen if you got to meet Mr. Rogers in real life and as an adult, and he could fix your life for you, right?
Okay. I like he's just kind of the white male Oprah.
Yeah.
I suppose. I guess as a Fred Rogers devotee, I was disappointed. I felt like Fred Rogers was this really fascinating person. He was subtly radical. He was, pro-civil rights at a time when that wasn't a given. He was anti-capitalist, anti-consumerist, just anti-establishment in all these different ways. He promoted, like, the importance of community, like, all these things that were just really super interesting, and they weren't even, like, they were just sort of alluded to. In a movie that was supposed to be about this amazing person, they alluded to things that made him amazing, and went back and focused on this story that I didn't actually care about, that didn't actually happen. I was just offended. I was offended. And I felt like the movie suffered from Julie and Julia syndrome.
How's that?
We kept leaving this really charming character portrayed by this lovable actor to go focus on a mediocre couple that was not interesting enough to warrant a movie.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
You know, I just didn't... I guess the thematic sort of epicenter of the film just wasn't there, and I guess that's my problem with it.
Yeah. Point. I'll agree with you there. Any other sort of cinematic notes before we kind of dig into that?
I mean,
I liked the soundtrack, but just because, like you said, it was like Nick Drake and Tracy Chapman and Cat Stevens, and I was just like, this is...
Absolutely. And the jazz. They don't skimp on the jazz, which Mr. Rogers was a huge, music aficionado, loved jazz, like through the show, like constantly had like all these jazz icons on as guests. So that was nice. But yeah, it was, I don't know who would go see this film is the thing.
I mean, I think, yeah, people,
their childhood during a troubling time.
Yeah.
I guess it's the same reason that the only thing that sells right now is comic book nostalgia. Movies and Disney nostalgia. Like we're basically back in the 30s and 40s.
Yep.
We're in the 30s and 40s when everything was awful and everyone just wants.
Yep.
We're doing that now.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't know. I've got nothing more. I love Tom Hanks though. I love him.
So let's talk about what is actually somewhat of a personal issue for the two of us.
Sure.
But the problem at the center of the movie is that it is based on, so the journalist Lloyd has had a falling out with his dad because when his mom got sick and then died, and while she was sick, his dad cheated on his mom, and then he basically...
Sure. And this is all fictional, we should just say. That's why they changed the journalist's name for the film. Yeah.
And then... So it's like there's so many problems in this. So then he his sister decides to reconcile with the dad and invites him to her wedding, where immediately, basically upon seeing Lloyd like flies into a rage and they get into a fight.
Oh, and the dad is it Jerry Vogel? Yeah, Jerry Vogel, right, is his name. And he's portrayed by Chris Cooper. The amazing, to great effect, I'd say.
Yeah. Oh, that there's no. I mean, and Matthew Rhys was good. It wasn't a particularly great part.
No, sure.
But so then some stuff happens. He's kind of distancing himself. And I'm like, problem number one that is never addressed is that the dad is trying to reach out to him and he's saying no. He comes home to find his dad and his dad's new girlfriend in his house because his wife let him. And that betrayal is never addressed, completely glossed over.
I would have divorced her on the spot. On the spot. Like old-fashioned Islam style, I would have said it 3 times, I divorce you, and we would have been done. I knew you'd be on the same page with me. I was
just like, so, okay.
Let's unpack this for a bit.
Yeah. So let's talk about family estrangement. And I'm going to link to this great article this woman wrote about reading on these forums by estranged parents whose children won't talk to them, and just like how they see, like how they rant about what's happening.
This ought to be good. This ought to be rich.
So like, let me tell you from unfortunate personal experience, like how much people do not accept that you should be estranged from your parent. And this whole movie is trying to sell you on a vision that like reconciling with his dad is the right thing to do. Starting with the wife letting him in the house and him being kind of angry, but we just like never addressed that. And I was like,
he's just being kind of a cranky pants.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, Lloyd, you're just so annoying and awful to not want your dad to come in here and be with your wife and child in your home.
Right. And it's like, she like betrays him in a really fundamental way. Like
unforgivable.
She knows he doesn't, but it's like, oh no, his thoughts, feelings, opinions about his own relationship with his dad apparently don't count at all.
Completely
because
unimportant.
Family, as Captain Awkward would, write.
Oh, I know. And when they're in the hospital, she makes some like just snide remark at him about, I'm going to go sit with your family. As if, like, you're just a terrible person.
Yeah.
For not wanting to, I guess, spend time with these people. It's like, you don't get to determine who is my family. I determine who is my family. You don't get to tell me what my, like, obligations are and to whom.
Not to mention the fact that he's basically had an anxiety attack going into the hospital in the first place because it brings back such traumatizing memories of his mom.
Right.
So he's basically losing it in the hospital, and she's like, F your mental health.
Yeah.
You need to be here for family.
Forget your PTSD.
Yes. Yeah.
I've decided what needs to be happening to you.
So I will say this, but then this just was infuriating as well. So all of this reconciliation does come about because the father actually gives him since he literally says, I screwed up. I was selfish. I shouldn't have done it. I waited years for my father to say those words. And you know what I got time and time again when I was still talking to him? An explanation about why he was actually justified in all the ways that he was completely selfish. Mm-hmm. Like, and again, when you read the Estranged Parents Forum, like, those parents never acknowledged they could have done anything wrong. Their whole MO is that my kid is an ungrateful brat.
I'm a martyr.
Yeah, I've reached out to them a million times. They won't even let me see my grandkids. Like,
yeah, all the violence.
Yeah, they just want to blame me for the past. Like, and so like the woman who wrote this article is like, there is no acknowledgement from any of these parents. And it's like a feedback loop where they all just support each other. Like, yes, of course your kid is an ungrateful jerk.
Oh, yeah.
And like never a moment of like self-awareness or like maybe...
Did you play some part in it?
Yeah.
Perhaps?
Yeah.
Being the more powerful authority figure in the situation for most of that lifetime. Like, don't think he played any part in it at all.
Right. And so then if they actually do get in touch with their kid and their kid wants to like talk about why they're so upset, then the parent just frames it as, they just want to rehash the past and they can't get over it and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'll accept the fact that the father actually took responsibility for it. I've like never seen that happen in real life. You know what I mean? People, I mean, it's like we all want to believe people change. People don't change.
I don't know. I can't categorically say they do or don't. I know that I've not seen in these situations or acknowledgement of any responsibility in the situations. I do see the value of forgiveness on the part of the, whoever feels they've been wronged or abused or mistreated. It was actually kind of it was a coincidence or providence or something. 3 days before I saw the film, I actually unintentionally forgave my childhood abuser. Yeah, I know.
My face is like, ooh.
Right. It wasn't anything I was working towards in my life or in my healing or in my development. I guess it's just something that had been happening maybe in the background. And just kind of, I realized that all at once that I had forgiven this person. It didn't mean that I didn't mind what they'd done. It didn't mean that I didn't think there should still be boundaries. It didn't mean that I wanted to spend any time with them. I didn't even communicate this to them.
Right.
I don't need to do that. That's personal to me. I don't need to do that. But within myself, I forgave them. And one of the first things Tom Hanks's Mr. Rogers says in like the very first scene in the movie is, do you know what it means to forgive somebody? It means you stop being angry at them. And I can see now why I'm not saying that I want to encourage anyone to forgive. It's not something I feel like I can tell someone to do. I don't even know that it's something you can endeavor to do. But if you feel like you can, I recommend it because I felt amazing after. I felt like I'd purged a demon.
Yeah, so that's what's so interesting about the movie because, Mr. Rogers says all forgiveness is like letting go of that anger. What the movie sells you on is, no, you have to have this big, happy reconciliation.
Yes, you now have to be a part of each other's lives. You have to now hand your baby to this person.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's, again...
Like, every situation is different, but
sorry. You can let go of the anger of abuse. And recognize that your abuser is an abusive person and cannot be in your life in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
And so, like, in the sense of Mr. Rogers, when he actually says all it is just saying goodbye to the anger, I think that is an incredibly healthy choice. But what ends up happening is people are like, well, you're not angry anymore, so now you have to, like, have a relationship with this person or, like, do a thing to get forgiveness. And you're like, no, I don't have to do any of that.
Do that. And it's a leap that these writers and this director make that I don't feel like they are qualified to make.
Right.
It's not helpful. And we don't have any to believe that the great Fred Rogers would ever encourage someone to go against their feelings. He wanted people to own their feelings and take care of themselves and love themselves.
Exactly.
Not completely disregard all the things that made them scared, the things that made them sad, the things that made them feel not loved, and just forget all that, kids, and just go places where you feel unsafe and unloved. No, he would not. I don't feel like he would have encouraged that kind of thing.
Me neither. And one of the things that I think that is so frustrating, like just watching this whole movie played out. And by the way, I'd just seen Waves, which was also about like a reconciliation. A father like apologizes for being a bad dad. And I'm like,
that would have been nice.
Yeah. I'm just sort of like, feel free to like tweet me all the times your parents apologized to you for being lousy. Because like, I'm just not sure it happens at the rate that Hollywood would have you believe. But so think of like, again, I'm not an expert on Mr. Rogers, but something that strikes me that's so fundamentally hasn't aged about Mr. Rogers is, what is his tagline? Won't you be my neighbor? Not my friend, not my son. It's, how do we surround ourselves in loving community?
Yes.
He wasn't like, family first. Family is the only important relationship you can have in your life. Like, there wasn't any family on the frickin' show. It was the postman and, it was all the people in your community that you're supposed to love and care for and build, kindness with. So it's like, we have totally shifted away from any sense of community mindedness in the ensuing, even by the time he started his show, like, that was already changing to intense focus on the knee.
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't know anyone who knows their neighbor's name.
Yeah.
Like, think, like, listener, do you know your neighbor's names?
I do.
Well, good. That's great.
We have a pretty good community in my building, and
that's great.
Yeah,
oh,
but you're right. Like, it's rare, and it's one of those things that, like, I just felt like, in some ways, was the ultimate betrayal of what he was trying to do, which is to say, don't prioritize your family over everybody else. Like, treat every single person with love, and because every human being has inherent. Until they prove that they don't, and then I think Mr. Rogers would be like, and you don't have to like have this person in your life because they're damaging,
Sure.
Protect yourself first. So, like, I guess that part too, like, really frustrated me, because I'm like, really, you use Mr. Rogers to sell us this whole, like, how you have to make nice with your, like, terrible destructive father?
Yeah.
Just because he's dying?
And I think that was the right word that you chose. I feel like this film used Mr. Rogers. And I don't even mean it in a nefarious way. I think everyone involved, they had, their hearts were in the right place, but they just kind of took this beloved, personage and just kind of did what they wanted with it.
Yeah.
And when the documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, was so beautiful. It was so well received. It made more money than any other biographical documentary in history. People were talking about it. There was an impact. Adults were remembering, oh, yes, there was this person. There was this great person. And he wanted us all to love each other and be kind. And he wanted to fight against, like, the forces of society that were, attacking children, and still are and have. And there are consequences to that now. And they just didn't pay honor to any of that. They didn't honor any of it. They just used it for this, I don't know, just fabricated, kind of manufactured sentimental schlock that I just wasn't backed up with anything.
And it just doesn't ring true. And, for everybody out there who has a really wonderful, loving, close, tight-knit family, I get it.
Bless you. That's great.
It's really hard for you to understand that there are parents in this world, there are people who have children don't love. Or they don't love unconditionally. The conditions are really high, or they love their children, but they see their children as a receptacle of all their negative emotions. I'm sure if you're a parent, you probably do love your kid the most magical thing in the world. Not all of us get that. And if this podcast accomplishes one thing, like, keep that in mind. The next time someone tells you, oh, what are you doing for Christmas? Are you going home?
That's the big one. Yeah.
No.
What do you say? What do you say? You just say the truth.
So when people ask me about my parents, I give, like, a polite version of the truth, which is we're not close.
I say we're estranged.
Yeah.
I straight up, and I don't, I don't try to, I'm not opening it up to, like, please, I want to tell you about my personal history now. I'm just answering the question. Oh, no, we're estranged. So I'll be spending my holiday XYZ.
Yeah.
And the reason I do it is because I think there's a lot more people out there with social media and just general kind of face keeping. Everyone tries really hard, like, with all of their energy sometimes, to make it look like everything's fine in my life. Everything is perfectly fine. I have no problems. I have no conflicts. I have no tension or drama. And when I've, frequently when I've said, oh, I'm estranged from my parents, sometimes you get, oh yeah, me too. Or just a sympathetic, oh, okay, and then I just ask them how they're doing. But at least what I want to do is go ahead and let people know that it's okay to not have a perfect situation, and a perfect family situation specifically, because we've all got problems and we're not freaks.
We do. And, we're recording this right after Thanksgiving break, where I did go home in very much quotation marks. I've never lived a day of my life, ironically, home to Mr. Rogers.
That's right.
But that is where my entire extended family is from. It's wonderful to see family. It's wonderful to feel that connection. I do understand, what a big loss it is.
Profound.
Not to have that. But if you don't, you don't. Mm-hmm. So on a personal note, if you're at a stage in your life where you're contemplating or just coming off of making a decision to go no contact or very little contact with a parent or both your parents, my life is, I have love. I have a lot of people who, would drive through the night and see me in the hospital. Those people, they say blood is thicker than water. It's not true. There are plenty of people who also have situations maybe similar to yours, so they're looking to create community outside of it, or maybe they don't, and they're just wonderful giving people. Being estranged for your family doesn't mean never having family. It just means you build your own a different way.
Amen to that. And I do want to give props to my family members that are quite supportive. A lot of times you'll find out which segments of your family are actually your real, true family in the way that word.
That's a good point. We've gone through some trying times. I have been given guilt trips that were miles and miles and miles long. But at the same time, the one thing about my extended family is, I will say, I always joke, please, tough love, we're a family of enablers.
Yes. Yeah.
My cousin used to, steal money out of everybody's purses because she was a junkie. And it's not like anybody stopped inviting her to family events. They just started locking their purses in the
And that's what family's all about.
So, yeah, they don't love my relationship with my parents, but they do their darndest to make sure it doesn't affect their relationship, after the guilt trip.
Sure.
They said their piece.
Right.
So, heavy one, this one. But, it's the holidays. You know what? This is the time when all of us are being sold as, family, 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 and or romantic love, romantic love, romantic love. It's Lord, people. Stop it.
Right. We're the lone voice of the desert saying it's okay to kind of have a sucky holiday situation.
Yes. All right. So I guess tying it all together, I just really don't know what to think about giving this a social impact score.
Box office of 35 million after 2 weekends, barely covering its production budget, not touching its marketing budget yet. But critical acclaim.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Rogers' messages of kindness are good. I don't know. What are you going to give it?
If we're talking about Mr. Rogers, the only 10 I would ever give to a piece of art is Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the 1,000 seasons together.
Yeah.
10. Social impact score. This movie, I don't know who went to see it except for just adults who were already into Mr. Rogers, and it didn't really cover anything that he was about.
3?
That's what I was thinking.
All right. 3. I guess we decided 3. Recommendations for the week?
Yes.
Woohoo!
Go on Twitter. Follow @Mr. Rogers Quotes.
Oh, nice.
On a social medium that can be so toxic and just make you so despondent. If you are subscribed, if you're following Mr. Rogers Quotes, you'll just at least every now and again get a little just dose of Mr. Rogers' wisdom to kind of keep you going. It really helps me on a day-to-day basis. So that's what I recommend.
Okay, so my recommendation for the week, By the way, I canceled Netflix and switched to HBO for a while, so you might be getting a lot of HBO recommendations, guys. I finally caught up and saw the movie Blind Spotting, which I'd wanted to see when it came out. And I just missed it and all the other things I have going on. So it features an interracial friendship. What's unique about the interracial friendship is that, for me anyway, I don't want to oversell the movie on this front, is that the white person in the friendship is kind of the minority, not the majority.
Okay.
So he grows up in Oakland, and he's, like the only white person. Yes, so he's in a majority-minority situation, which is something I relate to and just doesn't get shown on film a lot, and some of the tensions and things that come along with being in that role. But just overall, excellent performances, excellent themes, like just really well done. See it.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. Reach out to us on Twitter at Movies Matter Pod. If you want to talk to Stacy, she's at
Stacy Aaron Moore.
We have our Facebook page. We have our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. If you wanted to give a lovely Movies That Matter gift to somebody this holiday season, you can get the link to our Redbubble store on there. Pick them out a lovely t-shirt that says Movies That Matter.
'Tis the season.
It is. If you don't celebrate gift-giving holidays, just because gifts are also a thing.
That's true. Any time of the year.
And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
See you next time.